Welcome back to the Creative Genius podcast from Pearl Collective. We've had a busy second half of 2025 building educational events and connecting with amazing designers all over the country. But now we're back with a new season of designers, authors, and other members of the design industry. What happens when two brilliant designers who aren't even looking for a relationship have a serendipitous meeting in New Orleans and discover they both have a shared passion for design and a history of growing up on ranches? Well, they become partners in life and in business, building a multi-million-dollar empire. That's the story of Dwayne Bergmann and Kyle Barrett, who joined Gail Doby today on the Creative Genius podcast. Listen in as they share their incredible love story, their unconventional paths to success, and how they partner to build multiple businesses, including their shared venture.
Well, welcome to the Creative Genius podcast, Dwayne and Kyle. I am so excited to have you here, and we've gotten a chance to get to know each other over the last year or so. And you told me this wonderful personal story about how you two met, and I'd love for you to share that.
Dwayne, I'll let you take the lead.
Sure. So I do think there is something serendipitous about the way that we met. Neither of us were looking for, I think, a long-term relationship. I had come out of a very difficult divorce, and Kyle was at the end of a 4 or 5 year relationship himself. So maybe not the best of times when you were looking at it going, okay, I'm ready to meet the person that I want to be with the rest of my life. But so just kind of behind the scenes, that was individually happening. But on the serendipitous part, I was working in a project in New Orleans that it was a 2-year project, and I was in month 18 of the project. And I literally flew in once a month on a Tuesday, same flight in the afternoon, would get in, land, go check the project out quickly, work all day Wednesday, and take an early evening flight out. It was like a 6 o'clock flight on Wednesday. I always stayed at the same hotel. It was just like clockwork. We just did this every month. So this particular trip, my operations manager said, I don't know what is going on in New Orleans. I can't get you in anywhere. I can't get you on a flight. So you're going to fly in on a Thursday evening. You're going to work all day Friday. Like, you're going to get in really late Thursday. So you're not going to be able to go to the project Thursday. You're going to work all day Friday, and you're going to fly back on a 6 a.m. flight on Saturday because I can't get you out any other time. So, okay. I mean, it is what it is. She's like, and oh, by the way, you're staying at a completely different hotel in a different part of town because it was like $3,500 a night or something. It was ridiculous. So, okay, it is what it is. So I fly in, wait Friday morning, waiting for my car to arrive, and I'm outside of this hotel, and Kyle comes up, and I was just starting to make small talk. You know, what brings you to New Orleans? Because I've been in New Orleans enough at this point. Like, it's very transient. No one is just there visiting. Usually they're doing something, and usually it's a convention or whatever. But he said, oh, I'm here working. I said, oh, me too. You know, what do you do? And he said, oh, I'm here for an event that I'm working on. And I said, well, I'm a designer. I'm working. He's like, oh, well, I have a design firm as well. And so we just chit-chatted for a little bit, and I handed him my card and said, you know, if you're around later and would like to get a drink, if I get back, I don't fly out until tomorrow morning, would love to, you know, hear about a little bit more about what you do and where you're from and all that good stuff. So he said, well, the event is a wedding that I'm doing for a really good friend of mine, and the wedding is this evening, so I doubt that I can meet you. It's going to be a busy day. But why don't you text me? Here's my number. Why don't you text me or give me a call around 10 o'clock tonight, and I'll know, you know, what you know, if I'm going to be back at the hotel, and we could, you know, maybe meet late at the bar. So I texted him at 10, and he said, I'm still at the reception. Why don't you come over? And I was like, hell no, I am not crashing a wedding, period. That is not my style. One, I'm not dressed for a wedding. Two, I can't imagine crashing a wedding. And three, I know no one there and I don't know you. Like the other part was like, this is a kind of a risk. I just met you on the street, literally. This morning. I'm not sure that I want to go to a wedding venue. So he said, look, they're really good friends of mine. They said it's fine. It's a safe area. Everything is, it's fine. And he said, just come.
And it was the reception. It wasn't the actual wedding itself.
Yeah, it was the reception. So he convinced me to go. So I Ubered over to this, this venue, and walk in, and we talked for just a few minutes, and he introduced me to the people that he was working with, and then he said, "Hey, let's go. Why don't we sit over there? There's a quiet corner." And we literally went off to this corner at the reception and sat at this table. And this was probably 10:45 at this point. And we just started talking like this, just nonstop back and forth. And no, I think we both lost track of time, and one of his workers came over and just asked a couple of questions, and she came back and he said, "Oh my goodness, we've got to go. I've got to help them get all of this torn down." We had been talking so directly and were so just engrossed with each other in the conversation. They had completely torn down the entire reception, had everything packed, and it was 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And she was like, "No, everything is done. We just need to tell you that it's time to go. We all need to leave. Everything is packed up." So he drove me back to the hotel, said goodnight. He went on his way and kind of left it at, okay, you're in Texas, I'm in Florida, I have kids, you have businesses, I have businesses. Let's try to, we'll try to keep in touch. But it was one of the things. It's like, you're really cool. I don't know how this would ever work. But
he texted 6 the next morning.
So I did. So I didn't really sleep. I had to get up at 4. So I was, I sort of like got my stuff together and to the airport. So on the flight, I was like, at 6, maybe he did sleep. So I texted him, it was really nice meeting you, and safe travels on your way back to Texas today. And he started texting, and we never stopped.
That's so cool. And how many years ago was that?
Going on, it'll be 4 in literally 7 days.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you just reminded me that it's 4 days. I just made a calendar mark on that, as crazy as it's been with our work. But it is funny. Let me tell you one thing, Gail, that you already know about Dwayne Bergmann. When he ever says, I wasn't dressed for something, he's not being honest. He looked like he had walked out of, as my grandmother would say, a Spiegel catalog. And when we met, I had on, working this event, I had on a cap and a dirty t-shirt with floral stains all over it, shorts and tennis shoes, and he was dressed to the nines. So don't let him fool you on that part.
Yeah, we know all about his his dressing style. Oh, that's a great story. Well, you both have had a really interesting journey, and I'm going to start with you, Kyle, about how you got into design.
Actually, it's very interesting how it all happened. Whenever I was living in Dallas in my early 20s, and I had always had an interest in florals. I worked for TXU Energy in large commercial industrial side of customer service, but I had a good friend that serviced a lot of very high-end clients in Dallas with their floral needs. Would go in weekly or for parties and things like that, and I started helping on the side just because it was something I enjoyed doing when I was off work, and so that was kind of the start. I was also, and still am, a licensed realtor, and so one of the first houses that I did, I sold a large ranch home to some clients from Florida, and the lady looked at me and she said, I don't know where to even start to decorate this house. I'm so excited to have it. And I said, well, I'll help you. And so that's how I started. And then it just spread from there. And then, so I would sell a home, and then a lot of times I would turn around and help them redesign the home. And then my design business took off so fast that I had 2 businesses going at once. along with a party equipment rental store, and a cattle ranch in East Texas. So staying very busy, but that's how it started. Was just by fate, and I've been addicted ever since.
It's a great story. Oh my gosh, you guys have such good stories. So, Dwayne, you were at our recent boardroom retreat in Scottsdale, and you also shared this story about decorating cakes, and I'd love to hear that story again.
Okay, so the colorful part about the story. So really, you need to have my mother's face a reaction that you can see as I tell the story. I always tell her, like, if you didn't really understand that your son was slightly different than my older brother, then you were not looking. Because I started decorating cakes when I was in third grade, like with 4-H, took a cake decorating class, and then they were like, "Oh my goodness!" I learned how to do the roses in a minute, and it was putting out all these things, and so I got all the tips and all of the bags, and I made my first like 3-tier wedding cake with the. This is the Midwest, so it had the bridge. If you remember the plastic bridges that went to the 2 other 2 tiers on the side down to another bridge. So, that was my first wedding cake that I did, and just from then on, I would get requests, and I made decent little cash for a 4th, 5th grade. I would make $400 or $500. For a big wedding cake, it would be like $300. And so for the little sheet cakes, I remember doing like a farm scene sheet cake. I could make these little pigs and sheep and whatever, so John Deere tractors.
Oh my gosh.
So I would have this little side business as an elementary kid. And we get calls for birthday cakes and anniversary cakes. And so sometimes my mom would make the actual cake itself, and then I would just do the decorating. She would help me with that. Because at that point, I can't say I was an established baker at that age. I could definitely do the decorating, but I needed a little bit of help to make sure the cakes were always consistently the right moistness and flavor and all that good stuff. So she would help with that. But yeah, I think that creative side started really early. Even painting and stuff like that. My mom still has a horse painting that I did when I was maybe 1st or 2nd grade. And then did all the art. I always entered all the art contests and all that good stuff. So that part was innate. And that looking back, I don't think I realized any of that at that point, that, okay, there's a creative side. But it just came out anyway. Again, like what 9-10-year-old boys are decorating cakes. It's just not normal.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody that did that at 9 or 10 years old.
No, it's not like a normal, hey, okay, I'm going to go make wedding cakes as a 4th grader, but I enjoyed it. I had fun, and it was a kind of a way of just saying, oh, this is really pretty. And I guess if you boiled it back, the whole idea was I liked making things look neat and tidy and pretty and interesting and 3-dimensional. And that's like, going back to the farm cake, like they were 3-dimensional animals. Like they weren't like just flat with star tip, whatever. I like actually made where they sat on top of the cake. And anyway, fun stuff.
Which kind of ties in with you both having grown up on ranches. So tell me about that. I guess you two were just meant to be together.
I left mine. I'll jump in first, and you can, because your ranch story is way better than mine. I ran away from that whole part of my childhood for whatever reason. So one of the interesting things about meeting Kyle is that was such a huge part of my life for a long period of time, including riding and showing horses competitively, and having a rural farm Midwest background, and being raised and knowing how to roll your sleeves up and get dirty and put up hay and drive a tractor, and all of those things are fantastic. But in my late 20s, I like hard stopped and stopped riding horses and really left that entire part of my being behind, and had just closed that book completely until I met Kyle, and then started to sort of re-engage. And I know it's impacted my current not aesthetic, but overall perspective of design, and just being able to even tap into a different level of creativity. And to that extent, I'll just make the statement about the furniture collection. I drew every single piece sitting at our little oak round table in our guest house at the ranch. And I don't think I would have been able to create the designs, and certainly not the quantity of designs, if there wasn't this whole respite and kind of this peace and sort of reconnecting to the past and coming full circle and going, okay, you don't have to shut a chapter. You can still evolve, and that can still be a part of who you are, as well as the more metropolitan, European things that you like. You don't have to give up some things in order to enjoy others.
Well, sometimes just reconnecting with whatever your past is a really important thing, because it's who you are. It's what made you who you are today. And I just remember seeing a picture of you were texting me a picture, Kyle, when you were on vacation this summer, and there was Dwayne in his blue jeans out there. I don't know if you were feeding the pigs or
Working
what you
cattle,
were
yeah.
doing.
Working cattle. I was on the back of the chutes.
Oh my gosh.
I was coating them with fly spray and wormer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, you two have learned the work ethic, haven't you, over the years?
It's kind of funny. When I was growing up, just a little side story. I was always an entrepreneur. I really wanted to, I wanted to make money. I wasn't a normal kid at all. I was in the creek bottoms and climbing trees and working cattle and riding a horse or all the time. But when I was about 6 or 7, I had a little red wagon like most kids, but I had chickens and a garden, and I would literally, my mother would help me wash the eggs and clean the vegetables and put them in little bundles, and I would go through the whole neighborhood, and I would sell out. And I'm not sure if they bought it because it was great produce or they felt sorry for me, but I took such pride in that. I was so excited. And I tell a funny story about myself that, when most kids had a go-kart, I had a goat cart. I had a goat at the ranch that literally would pull this cart that my dad had made for me. And everybody in town just thought it was the funniest thing because if you'll remember those little brooms that were small, that's how I would steer it. I would pat him on either side and he would turn right or left and woe would make him stop. We never figured out reverse, but it definitely was interesting growing up on the ranch, and memories that I will never ever forget, and I think it's definitely made me part of who I am.
Oh, it's so funny. Thanks for sharing. I hadn't heard that one. That was a good one. Okay, a goat cart.
Yeah, had a goat
I've seen photos. It's real.
Oh my gosh. I could hang out with you and listen for hours to your stories. So, Dwayne, you don't have a design degree, you have an MBA. And what led you to be a designer? And tell us a little bit about how you started your firm in the first place.
Sure. So I in addition to being raised on a farm in rural, my uncle and my grandfather and my dad worked part of the time as well in construction. So they built homes, they built barns, was around all of that my whole life. So there's always a knowledge of the construction side of the world, but to be frank, design and interior design wasn't even anything that anyone ever spoke about in the part of the country where I grew up in Missouri. It just wasn't like I didn't know anybody who was a professional designer. it was either you were an art teacher or you were in some type of more visual arts, but it just wasn't a career path that I didn't even know it existed. So it was probably later in my 20s when I first had some additional exposure to true professional interior designers, and that's after I got recruited by the Home Depot, and then I was working on the HD Supply side, and we had a division called Creative Touch Interiors. So there's some other touch points along the way, but that impacted the interior design side. But really, that was the time frame where I got a lot of exposure to interior design plans and reading the plans and looking and sourcing products that were specified for those plans, and then getting very involved in the projects and some of the project management pieces of that. So it was kind of an interesting time and some interesting exposure to that. But even though there was exposure on the professional side and then the personal side, the true design piece, again, it just sort of happened organically. So I bought my first house when I was 19. It was a small, like 1,700 square foot house. I very specific. I paid $71,000 for it. I think 71.5. And I was telling Kyle the other day, like, I did all the wallpaper myself. I painted everything myself. I think I did everything but hang or wire the light fixtures. I'm pretty sure I brought somebody in to wire the light fixtures, but I laid the carpet and did all this stuff on my own. And about a year later, there was and this is when I was riding and showing horses. I had a client came and spent the weekend, and he's like, my sister is moving to this area and she wants a smaller house. I think she'd like to buy the house. I sold the house for $125,000, and
wow.
I probably had $10,000 of like actual cash. And again, this was dating myself, but almost 30 years ago now. So, that was a lot of money to go from, 71 to 125, and there were no realtors involved. And, it was just a nice thing. And so that kind of parlayed. I started, I would buy a house, I would do my thing to it, live in it. And every single one somebody would come and make an offer and typically want everything but my clothes. So
why didn't they want your clothes?
Well, I wouldn't sell my clothes, but they were like, look, just your immediately personal items, but they would want all the art and just everything was done. So I did that multiple times, and then in 2009. I bought would have been my largest project. So it was about a 4,200 square foot home on an acre lot. And if you recall, that was not a great real estate time in 2008, 2009. Markets were not really great. So this house had been listed. It was originally listed for about $900,000, and I had just watched it. It was in a great community, and the pricing came down, and I ended up buying it for like $415,000, I think. But it was terrible. It was really, really bad.
There's no way to describe the pictures that I saw. I mean, you really should go into a little bit of detail about some of the things this house had, because it would have made a move.
we don't have all day for that, but what I will share is the realtor that had the house listed. She met me at the door. I walked in, and she was like, thanks for coming to see the house. And I was like, okay, I'd like to see the rest. She's like, really? Everybody walks in and walks back out. And I said, yeah, I want to see the house. That's why I'm here. But the one thing I will say is the master suite, you walked into the primary bedroom area, and it was kind of open into this closet. It had a sunken round tub, carpeted in pink carpet.
That's where I wanted him to
go. The gold mirrors. So the closet doors had gold framed mirrors all around the closet. So that was your view from the bedroom as well. So you stepped up on this pink carpet into this area. You walked around a pink carpeted sunken round tub. So very like 70s Vegas inspired. So anyway, that's one of the elements and why most people walked out. So I completely I ripped this house apart. The biggest renovation I ever did, including adding steel beams to structurally open up. So I took this very chopped up house and opened everything up. And that time, again, if you think stylistically, it was before we had really gotten into that industrial modern movement. So, but that's where I took this house. So I did like walnut stained concrete floors throughout. We had an exposed steel staircase with chunky walnut treads and stainless steel railings, and just the entire house was it was just not a typical house for the timeline or the time frame. And then it was also much more modern than we were still seeing, especially in Florida. We were still in that Mediterranean. We were still stuck in that moment. So I had a charity event at the house, and one of the people that came was the editor. It was the editor and owner of Gulf Shore Life magazine, and they were doing their initial annual edition of what they call Home, or At Home, I think is what they call it now. They just call it Home, but it was called At Home, and they would feature, I think it was 8 or 9 properties throughout Southwest Florida, and up to this point, they had done. I think they'd done one other edition, and all the homes were in Naples. So they were looking to try to showcase a little bit more of modern, and he was having a lot of challenges. So he just approached me after the event and said, I would love to feature your home. And again, I was unaware of like how any of that works. I had never been exposed to that. So they came in, they photographed the house, staged it, photographed it, did I don't know, it was like an 8 or 9 page feature. And then the questions were, who was the designer? Well, I did the design work. Who was the architect? Well, I didn't have an architect. I did all of that. Who was the general contractor? Well, I pulled my own permits and hired my subcontractors. So I started getting phone calls after this was on the newsstands for several people that had renovation projects, and I was like, and this is the part that I feel the worst about now is I was like, I have a real job. I'm not a designer. Like, I work a full-time job. Like, I have an MBA and I work for a company and whatever else. So I was very dismissive. And so finally, after the 4th or 5th call, my partner at the time said, why don't you just try it? Like, what do you have to lose? You've been open and honest with him that you're not a professional designer, that this was your hobby, and you like doing this, because the article kind of got into some of that I'd done, several other homes and all this good stuff. But so I said, you know what, you're right. Why not just try it? So I chose what I thought would be the most challenging project and client of anyone who had called, and did the project in the evenings and weekends while I was working, and it turned out fantastic. And she referred me to like 3 other people, and so when I resigned from my role, we had 8 active projects that I had been working on, and I worked from 7 or 8 o'clock at night till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I worked all Saturday, every Saturday and Sunday. So when you're talking about starting your firm, I did start my firm technically while I was employed, working nights and weekends. And even when I gave my resignation, they asked for an extended period of time just to offload my job. So I always say I don't feel like I did any disservice to my employer while working in again 2 separate fields at the time. But I didn't have any expectations of creating a large firm at the time. I simply enjoyed all of the design work, and it was all renovations at that point, so all remodels, and it was very rewarding. It was a lot of fun. I hired 2 people very quickly to work with me within the first 60 days after being officially launched, and it just took off, and never stopped working 18 hours a day for the most part for the last 12 years. So that's the I think that's the backstory.
Wow. Well, that's definitely a glutton for punishment doing all of that. And because you both run several businesses, so Kyle, I'm going to give you a chance to kind of tell us a little bit about that. And the two of you have a line of products together. You have furnishings for vanities, you have florals, you have candles, you have all sorts of things. So share a little bit about how that whole business.
Well, something I'm extremely excited about, and I tell designers and shop and store owners when we've seen them at market, I have to apologize before I get started because it is exciting. We have a company, Barrett Bergmann Home, which is shopbbh.com. We are designers for designers, and in that, which includes the shop owners. But it's a company that Dwayne and I, Dwayne already had a small part of this idea starting whenever he and I met, and it kind of exploded from there. We have a fragrance line that is just absolutely wonderful. I'm so proud of it. It's really been great. We'll have 12 cents by the end of the year, with 3 holiday scents added to that as well. Our top of bed is very, very unique and amazing. We have, what is it, Dwayne? 500 different fabrics you can choose from for a designer.
583 to be exact.
Okay. Thank you. I thought it was right in there somewhere. But then we have several that are already pre-mades, but the needle is amazing. Our sheeting is just top of the line. Dwayne and I have probably slept on 100 different sheet sets over the last 3 years. It's been a very long process to put this together before it was launched. Learning as we go in many areas because some of these are new for us. We have a floral line that we're so proud of that was launched at High Point Market and had a really great response from. I had a florist for many, many years in Texas, and I never liked artificial florals at all because they looked artificial. And I think at the last count, we went through a little over 1,000 stems of florals, choosing the very best quality, the most realistic, the best feel before making our arrangements. And right now, I think we're at about 114 different arrangements that I would put up against any competitor. I'm really, really proud of our florals. Dwayne has an amazing vanity program that is very unique to the market, Handmade USA. But we actually can brand the designer's name on the inside of the door, which though it's Dwayne's design, they can put together the look that they like, and that would be they would get the credit for that design every time the door was open. It's a reminder of who that designer was. So, and that's kind of how we tried to do the entire Barrett Bergmann line. Is even with our pillows, we have a mulberry silk pillow that is just absolutely like sleeping on a cloud. But it comes in a great canvas bag. We can personalize the front on a leather label there. Our leather products are from Peru. Absolutely wonderful Peru and Italy. I actually traveled to Peru, set with a artisan at a 110-year-old company. The gentleman is 82 years old and has worked there since he was 7. He started sweeping the floors. And so he has been there that many years. And though we didn't speak the same language, we created a respect and bond. I would show him what I wanted done. And he would do the work and show me. And after several attempts, we came up with some really amazing products that just aren't on the market. But one of our main things that we wanted to do is make a promise to designers and shop owners that if one of our products were placed in their house, it would be something that they wouldn't go to a big box store or the internet and find, that it would be a unique product that they would place in their client's home. One thing I do love to tell designers and shop owners is you can take a beautiful piece of accessory and place it in someone's home and it's beautiful. But if you have something that you can place that has a story and you can tell that story about how it was produced by a 110-year-old company, by a man that's worked there since he was 7 years old. He's 82 and he made this with his hands. It goes from a beautiful piece to an heirloom because and it still gives me chills and makes me know that we're doing the right thing here, because for people in the design industry, how wonderful is it to be able to share that with your client? Not as a sales tool, but as a tool to show the importance of the product. You could have someone, Gail could buy one of our trays, for example, or our leather frames, and someone comes over and says, "Wow, Gail, that's a beautiful tray." And then Gail gets to tell the story. Let me tell you about this tray. It makes it so much more important. And that's something that really excites us about Barrett Bergmann Home.
That's great. Well, it's kind of exciting. And besides all of this, you've also grown by acquisition. So, Dwayne, you might want to share a little bit about that, because you bought a business a while back, and that is a great way to expand your business. But tell us about how that all came about.
Sure. So I started working on acquiring a new business prior to COVID, actually. And so these were kind of ideas that I put into motion late 2018, the beginning of 2019. And I was looking at a business on the East Coast of Florida. And it was an interesting design firm. They also had a retail presence, about a 5,500, 6,000 square foot furniture showroom in Fort Lauderdale, in addition to the design business that was adjacent. So I thought, oh, this would be interesting. It'll give a little bit of retail exposure, and it kind of expand our design work from the East Coast to the West Coast. And at that point, I had several projects on the East Coast of Florida. So I thought, okay, that won't be so bad of having to go back and forth between the two sides. And for people who aren't aware, so the Fort Lauderdale from Fort Myers is about 2.5 hours. So manageable to go and come back in the same day. Not easy, but manageable. However, during the COVID timeframe, with everything being shut down, we were right in probably the last 90 days of due diligence. And I just pulled the plug. It's like there was so much uncertainty and unsure with any retail environment at that point. So that deal, I just let it go. And again, I think sometimes in the universe, when you put things out that you want to do that, I got contacted by Faith Fix, who is the owner of Freestyle, and she just reached out, and it was just general conversation. She just said, I've seen your work. I commend you that you launched your business in Fort Myers instead of Naples. She's like, I thought I would try to do that 40 years ago and tried it and quickly, reassessed and focused on the Naples market. So she was like, I'm just very impressed that you were able to grow the size of the firm, because at that point I had 25, 26 employees in DBI, and we were doing 50 to 75 projects a year at that time frame. So we just started talking, and they were just casual, like we'd maybe meet every 6 or 7 weeks. And after a few meetings, she point blank said, have you ever thought about growing your business? And I said, absolutely. In fact, I tried to buy this company in Fort Lauderdale, and I've been sort of looking at, different things that pop up. I was like, I'm not working directly with a broker, but, I do have some feelers out. And she said, well, interestingly enough, I'm nearing the time frame where, I need to figure out what my succession plan is. So that's how it all started. And we spent another year simply working out details, really making sure our cultures would align, and a lot of our thoughts and values were similar. So we were able to put a successful deal together, and I took full ownership of that company on, and she's still a part of the business and plans on being there and I'm happy to have her involved and engaged as long as she wants to. I know she has grandchildren that pull her to the East Coast and to the West Coast, both New York and California. So that's one of the benefits of adult children and getting to that stage when you have grandkids. And so I don't know what the long term looks like for her, but we have a very strong working relationship, and as long as she wants to stay involved, I am sure we will have a role for her to play. So that has they were the same size of firm that I had in Fort Myers. So we pretty much doubled in size immediately, and then I wanted to enact a little bit different strategy, and that was part of, as I assessed this acquisition, like what it could do for me in terms of kind of my other future plans and longer term goals. So it's really worked out well. It's allowed me to redivert work to the Freestyle location, reduce the number of designers that are under the DBI brand, while we've increased the number of employees at the Freestyle location. So we've really kind of taken the approach of diverting a decent amount of design work out of DBI to Freestyle. And that has allowed me a little bit more time and energy to focus on product development, launching and growing the Barrett Bergmann home business, and then positioning ourselves for kind of what we want to do over the next 2 to 5 years. So acquisitions, I think, are an amazing way to grow. They all have their pros and cons, not something that you should do without a lot of thought and careful consideration, and patience. And I think that's the other part. I mean, it's definitely something that you need to be ready to have, back and forth conversations. And I think the most important thing is if the cultures are not very closely aligned, it can be extremely difficult.
Well, it's really interesting because you've built all these businesses, so obviously you're an empire builder, both of you, and it's really cool to watch this because you've gone is it 13 years? I think you said when you started this business, and so at this point you are. I don't know if you want to share this, but you're welcome to, if you want, to say what you've built it to, how many people, revenue, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, we're a little over. I always have to check the employee count, but we're just under 50 employees currently, and I'm very proud. We're a multi-million-dollar organization. Collectively, we manage a significant amount of projects, but we have, and I always tell people that's because we have a large designer base. And so when you have 13, 14, 15 designers that can manage 4 to 5 projects, when at that point you say you have 50 to 60 projects, but you're spreading them across 12 to 15 designers, then it really allows each designer to have 3 to 5 key projects that they're focused on. And in my experience, that's a really good number for most, even at large project size. I mean, most of the time designers can handle 3, 5, 7, even up to 10 projects if they're more furnishings and decor. So we're very, very blessed. We've had a solid kind of growth trajectory and year over year for the most part, and we've been able to manage the storms that have come through the economy and the different changes. But that goes to speak to the quality and level of designers that have always been associated with both Dwayne Bergmann and Freestyle. And that's not by accident. I mean, it's we have high expectations. We do believe that we give them all of the resources that they need. And there's a lot of independence for the designers that work with us to be creatively expressive, to run their projects, the way that works best for them, while at the same time having a very solid, grounded base and resources for them to lean on, which allows them to be totally engaged into the creative side and the client servicing side of this business without having to be mired into all of the logistics and everything that happens behind the scenes, as well as all the overhead and strategic things that we have to address on a regular basis as owners.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we're at the end of our time, and I just would love it if maybe the two of you will give me 3 great takeaways for people who are listening to this who might be interested in growing their businesses. And what would you like to share? Kyle, I'll start with you.
I would say dream big and don't be scared. Be cautious and careful, but never stop dreaming, because if you can dream it, it can happen. I think that's probably all wrapped into the same question, but it's if there's something you want to do or a direction you want to go, do it. Don't be scared to hold back. If you have a design client that you're working with and you're scared to throw an idea out, it may be the best idea that the project has. So dream big, dream wild, and live life to the fullest when it comes to your designs.
So first and foremost, there's no substitute for hard work. If you really, building off of what Kyle is saying, if you really want to make something happen, it's going to require hard work. And if anyone has ever told you otherwise, then I would have lots of questions for them. And might be coming from different resources and things like that. But one, if you want to make something happen, you've got to be prepared to work extremely hard for that. 2, and I was on a panel recently, and I mentioned the word, what have you learned from your failures? And the one individual replied, I've never failed. I've only learned from things that didn't maybe go the way I had planned. And while I agree that that's a positive spin, and we all need to practice, being positive, I'm a very direct, very realist, and I don't mesh words a lot. So look, we all fail, period. It's what we do with that. And so, yes, we can treat it as a lesson, or we can, get depressed about it. But my second piece of advice is, don't be afraid of failure. That's the most valuable way that we learn. And so learn from your failures, get back on the horse immediately. And, I always say, if you're going to fail quickly, document everything in that process so you don't make the same mistakes twice. Apply the knowledge that you learned, and continue on with your strategy and your goal, unless during that failure you identified that your strategy was flawed. So I think that whole part is really key. We all get way too tied up with being back to what Kyle's saying, with being scared of failure. And then the last is be patient. They're especially in the world we live in right now, I think there's this idea that we should have immediate gratification, and building a business does not happen overnight. Building success does not happen overnight. We need to have goals, and we need to set our eyes on those goals and do everything that we need to accomplish them. But it does require patience. So that's one that we don't always have as designers.
No, we do not. You are absolutely correct. Well, you guys are just wonderful. And thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I know that everybody will enjoy hearing what you had to say. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dwayne and Kyle, for sharing such a wonderful story of personal and professional partnership. Their journey from a chance meeting to a thriving design empire is truly inspiring. We hope their insights on hard work, Learning from failure and being patient will motivate you to pursue your own dream big goals. Join us for the rest of Season 14, coming soon. And to learn more about us, check out thepearlcollective.com.